Hey everybody, welcome back to Vimm. So, taking another fun and unfortunate episode for you guys to watch this evening as we are updating what's going on with Vimm's Lair, the DMCA takedown notices, and whether or not they're coming from Nintendo. Because for the longest time it seemed to be presumed that trolls were doing this on Nintendo's behalf just to mess around with somebody, and unfortunately that is not the case. So we're going to be talking about what's going on with Vimm's Lair, what Nintendo is doing, and why they are doing it, and how that's going to change things moving forward in the future. Before you get far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But last time we talked about this, Vimm's Lair had been hit with a bunch of DMCA notices, almost 1,000, talking about different images and game downloads. And that was a very strange thing because it seemed to hit some titles but not all of them, so it was very confusing to parse through why that would have actually happened, where one game would be available to download and the next game would be removed by that DMCA. So people seem to think that there were trolls involved in this. This is from the previous video, and you'll see something like Super Mario Bros. 3, the download box art and screenshots were unavailable at the request of Nintendo of America. But if you went over to other games within the list, you would find out that some of those games, like Metroid, wholly owned by Nintendo, were still 100% available. It seemed like whatever was going on here was not encompassing Nintendo's entire catalog. Now, Vimm updated this information on May 31st, just 3 days ago, and he got corrected DMCA notices, and those fixed basically all the deficiencies in those that would have made it seem like it was trolls. So at least at the time of the recording of this, it seems pretty much confirmed that Nintendo or an agent working on their behalf has sent all these DMCA takedown notices, and these are in effect from Nintendo asking them to remove all of this information from the website. But that makes you wonder, how did a lawyer in a law firm end up sending DMCA notices with misspellings and other grammatical issues? And we're going to find out, seemingly at least. I did some research on the company behind this. AI is writing these now, and of course if you've seen anything about AI lately, it also recommends putting glue inside a pizza sauce to thicken it up. All jokes aside, it is not very efficient. It basically just casts a wide net and totally screws up most of it. So as of today, you'll see Super Mario All-Stars is 100% not available to download on Vimm's Lair. This was something that was included in those updated DMCA notices. But if you move over to Super Mario Bros. 2 Yoshi's Island, that is still 100% fine. This means basically that a human being is not involved in this. These companies that are monitoring this information for Nintendo, that Nintendo has contracted, are using AI and generative things to basically try to remove this information from the internet, and obviously that's not going to be as good as a human being doing it. And when we saw the DMCA notices on Yuzu and the Suzu forks and all the different repositories, there was 8,535 DMCA notices sent. I highly doubt a human being wrote them all, and that's going to be completely functionally different than when Nintendo sued Tropical Haze, the developers of the Yuzu emulator, and that was obviously written by a lawyer or a team of lawyers in a law firm somewhere, and it was done by a human brain. Because at this point in time, I haven't heard any instances of any lawsuits being filed by AI, but I'm sure we're only a few years away, as scary as that honestly sounds, because AI, for as fun as it is also completely flawed in so many different ways. And if we go back over to Vimm's message board, they talk about mm-nintendo.com and whether or not that's a fake domain. It is not. It is registered by Mark Monitor, and they are a large corporation that you can basically contract out protection services for any number of things, and they will go around the internet with other partners and basically look for anything they consider infringing and try to have it removed on your behalf. So this is basically a contract service that anyone could subscribe to, and this is the same company apparently that sent all the DMCA notices to Gary's Mod when it came for Nintendo characters and other Nintendo assets showing up in that engine. So it seems basically that Nintendo has contracted out a third party, and that third party is now using AI to send takedown notices, and that AI is not doing a very good job of actually doing it. And what this company is using is visual artificial intelligence to spot more forms of infringement. It's looking for screenshots, it's looking for box art, it's looking for text descriptions, and it's trying to automate this process, basically taking the human element out of it completely so that they can collect money by doing this without actually utilizing any human beings, which is sad in its own right with AI doing something like that on multiple fronts. And again, when we go to the Tropic Haze lawsuit, this is real lawyers doing real lawyer things, whether you like it or not. I certainly don't. But what we're seeing here on Vimm's Lair is a completely different aspect. But we have to talk about what's going on here in the world of emulation in general, and why suddenly you're seeing companies like Nintendo get so much more aggressive with this. And I genuinely think they're going to get even more aggressive in the next 12 to 18 months. Because normally Nintendo goes after websites and sues them, but that can be more of a time-consuming process. It seems like they're going to be utilizing DMCA takedowns to remove from the internet what they don't want, and there's one reason for this in my opinion. Suddenly, Apple is allowing emulators on the iOS store. You can now download emulators on your iPhone and start playing games whenever you want. And that's a complete pivot from what Apple has done since the beginning of the iPhone, barring any sort of software emulation for games on their platforms. So now suddenly there's an influx of new devices that can emulate games, and trust me, I know you could do it before, but this is to your average user. So we're going to put on our Nintendo hat right now. The following numbers are not what I am arguing to be correct. I'm just trying to explain to you how somebody like Nintendo would view this thing. As of today, there are 1.46 billion active iPhone users in the world. That means there's 1.46 billion devices that people could emulate them on. Now let's say that maybe 1% of all users of an iPhone would be interested in actually emulating retro games. That might be a small number indeed. Let's say that's 1.46 million people that are going to try to emulate games on their iPhone. So how many people are going to do what is the question? If 10% of the 1% of people that might emulate are going to download one Nintendo game, you're going to end up with an instance of 146,000 people downloading one Nintendo game for their phone to play on emulation. Now let's say something like $5 per title is what Nintendo would love to sell that game to them for, to be able to play that retro game that Nintendo produced. So now your accounting department is saying you're losing $730,000 a title because of software emulation on the iPhone, and your legal team is saying on average people download 5 games for these emulators, and now suddenly Nintendo thinks that for each title they're losing something like $3.65 million in potential sales. Now that is not true at all. I told you I was putting on my Nintendo hat, and these people were not buying the game in the first place. This is just something of opportunity, but that is why somebody like Nintendo gets so afraid of the idea of emulation. They create numbers whole cloth in their imagination as to what they're standing to lose, and this is just for games like NES and Super Nintendo games. There is a 3DS emulator available on the iPhone. Honestly, apparently it's not too buttoned up, but if Nintendo starts thinking they're losing $20 to $30 per title, then all of a sudden those numbers that I am making up and pretending to be Nintendo on start getting exponentially bigger. I'm sure somewhere in an accounting department they're saying we're losing $100 million a year just to iPhone. And don't forget, Apple is not doing this out of any sort of kindness of their heart. This is not a benevolent action. They are trying to satisfy the European Union and all of the different injunctions and lawsuits that are basically trying to say that the iOS store is a monopoly and is violating European law. So this is why I think this is all happening right now. We now know that those takedown requests from Vimm's Lair apparently are from a Nintendo partner, so that means Nintendo is doing it. If a party you contract with acts on your behalf, it is as good as the parent company, in this instance Nintendo, doing it in and of itself. And it seems like suddenly, now that Apple has announced and allowed software emulators to run on iOS and on iPhones, I bet you're going to see a lot more sites get hit like this, because we all know, myself included and the people that watch this channel, that this is impossible to make disappear from the internet. But think of your average user, someone who's never used a software emulator before and wants to just play something like Super Mario World. They're going to see that it was taken down, and they'll probably just honestly stop looking, even if the AI hasn't gotten all of the games quite yet. So that is the current situation with Vimm's Lair. It is quite disappointing, but it seems like AI is being employed to automatically send DMCA takedown requests for games that Nintendo does not want online, and they are using a partner company to do this for them. So as far as Nintendo's battle against software emulation, it still continues, and I'm sure I'm going to be updating this video with a new topic in the next week or two. But short of that, leave me any questions or comments you have down below. It's another disappointing video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.